Desculpem, estava aqui com o microfone desligado e está. Estava aqui numa apresentação incrível, vocês acabaram de perder talvez a melhor apresentação de sempre, mas estava com o on mute, está pela terceira vez nesta sessão que já falamos sobre isso, é a conversa que mais se diz nestas sessões online. Mas estava eu a dizer, muito bem-vindos à última sessão desta edição da Banco Montepio Acredita Portugal Virtual Week, onde nós agora vamos ter a sessão em que vamos falar talvez do último passo desta caminhada dos empreendedores, que é quando chegamos ao ponto em que já crescemos o projeto, já o validamos, já estamos com vendas e queremos pensar já no mercado um pouco ainda mais além. Queremos pensar um pouco já no mercado estrangeiro e como internacionalizar. Nós, Acredita Portugal, convidamos um conjunto de parceiros da Acredita Portugal, parceiros internacionais, que vão estar um bocadinho hoje aqui a falar das suas empresas, dos seus mercados, do seu ecossistema e de como é que vos podem ajudar neste processo de internacionalização. Então, vou passar esta sessão agora toda para inglês, então quem está aí em casa, a partir de agora vai-nos passar a ouvir a falar em inglês, toda esta conversa, discussão será feita em inglês. Portanto, for this moment on, we're going to speak just in English. Please, I want to ask Miguel, Mikhail, Pierre, and also Simone, Sofia, and Rom to join me. Please, guys, come and join me. Hi, Miguel. Hi, Mikhail. Simone, Rom.
Good afternoon.
And Sofia. Good afternoon,
Good
you
afternoon,
guys.
everybody.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Feeling energetic for the session? So, guys, this is how we're going to proceed, okay? All of you guys will have like 7 to 10 minutes to explain who you are, what you're doing, what are the companies you're representing, and talk a little bit more about your ecosystems, okay? So we are going to start by this random order, okay? I will ask first for Miguel, because Miguel is just next to me. So please, Miguel, take the lead and be my guest.
Okay, so thank you very much, first of all, to Acredita Portugal for the invitation to be part of this panel discussion. I think it's a very interesting and timely topic to discuss about internationalization. I'm a founder. My name is Miguel. I'm a behavioral scientist in the bigger scope, and I work in international conflict resolution in the next layer of the bigger scope. And in that sense, I work mainly helping governments and companies to deal with interactions with China. Basically, what I do now, my company is still registered in China, thinking about moving into Europe, but we're still there, even though right now I'm in a different location. I'm in Portugal. But the idea with Alternatives A is to help accept the sourcing of products, to help with everything that has to do with internationalizing into China or from China outside to other countries, more specifically Europe and the Americas. So basically, I'm gonna be using a sort of presentation that I prepared, but I'm not gonna show it because the time we have is pretty short, and I would prefer just to give you some hints about internationalization in general and specifics, a little bit more specific about China. And hopefully when the questions comes, then we can go more specific on a sort of case study by answering this question. Philippe, will that be okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So basically, I think there are three things in general that we need to consider entering any market, and for basically any reasons, right? I'm talking about businesses. The first is what every business person should know, which is market research, and there are many ways you can use to do that, so I'm not gonna really get into that. And the other point is what most businesses ignore, which is culture. I started my professional life in Asia as a diplomat when the embassy of El Salvador was still in Taiwan, in Taipei. And that was my sort of entry level to international cooperation. And I saw and also suffered a lot of painful moments because the decision makers didn't consider the cultural aspects of either side of the equation, and that brought a lot of hard moments to deal with, and that was how my interested in entering international conflict solution actually started. Then I entered the bicycle industry as a market development, and I needed to, I was working on developing Europe, Russia, and then the Latin America for a different company that was in the bicycle industry. And the same, having the experience of being a diplomat in Taipei, I used the cultural approach to market development, and it works perfectly. My bosses not necessarily understood that thing or supported it until they saw the numbers growing. So it's a good approach, and this is perhaps what I will concentrate on today, and stressing how important it is to take culture as the moderating factor for successfully entering and remaining in a different market. And then the third part of my sharing today will be specific about China. Now, these specifics are going to be very general because truly China is a very complex society that shows a surface that may not be necessarily the same when you dive deep into it. Okay, so first things, as I say, what every business person should know is the market research, whether the market is ready for you, whether or not you are ready for the market. These are the two questions that you need to answer first. Okay, so but that's not going to be the core of my sharing. Um, in terms of culture, perhaps the most important thing to take under consideration is that when you enter a country, a market, you enter a culture. So it's very important to understand culturally what incentivizes that market. Also, it's important to remember that when you enter a culture as a business person with a product or service, you are a culture entering another culture, right? So there is a culture collision, during the first encounters. So how many factors of culture we take under consideration is what will make the entry less painful and in the long run successful. In China, I helped the Shanghai government as well as the Salvadorian government in an advisory kind of role, to set up sort of the strategies of how they were going to work together when El Salvador decided to move the embassy from Taipei after so many years to Beijing. The whole world was actually worrying about China using El Salvador as an entry, geopolitical, strategical move, things like that. The United States was doing a little bit more of like more than pressure on El Salvador not to do this, not to do that with China. El Salvador was seeing it from a totally different perspective. And so there was a very interesting three factors formula that we needed to deal with. And in this sense, that is presented as the business opportunities, economical opportunities that will come to El Salvador as cooperating with China, but from the USA perspective, and most probably from the Chinese perspective, is the geopolitical factors. So, in business wise, we cannot take the political side away from the formula. So we need to consider it and to what extent we are going to put more politics into the business has to do with the kind of society that we enter, the kind of market that we want to enter. So in terms of culture, I think that there is one classification that is most important. And now perhaps I'm going to say, when you want to sell um, a product or a service into a country, there is one cultural classification that needs to be really taken under consideration. Whether this market is more towards being individualistic or collectivistic. And the reason is that all your marketing campaign, the content of it, has to do with promoting your service or products is based on individual or on groups benefits, right? Yeah, you have to justify your added value, your value proposition to the market. But that content of your marketing campaign will be defined primarily due to this, based on this specific cultural classification. And now you need to consider after that whether it's a high or low context, because it will determine the amount of information that you need to provide to this market. Okay, so when we don't do that, we may be speaking too much or speaking too little. I give you a case. After the bicycle industry, I moved to the fashion and textiles, in a globalization project for a large Taiwanese multinational. They grew randomly, and at the end, in 9 countries, they had 13 different locations, and they were like losing control of it. And at some point, we hired a team in Texas. Um, the headquarters is in Taiwan, right? Taiwan is a very high context oriented culture, but that means they say very little and leave the context for everybody's interpretation. While in the United States is very low context, they say everything. So the contract that the Taiwan sent to the U.S. was far too large, far too small for what a U.S. the contract in the U.S. will be. So they reply with, let's say, for example, um, the contract from Taiwan was 10 pages. The contract from the U.S. was 120, and that kept me in the middle of trying to find out the balance between too much of too little information and what that information conveys, right? So, culturally speaking, both were concerned about the uncertainties that come from the macro environment. Taiwan didn't want to compromise too much because they understand that there are too many uncertainties. And the U.S. they want Taiwan to compromise more because they knew that there are macro factors in the macro environment that they cannot control. It's also a factor of uncertainty. But culturally speaking, they deal with uncertainty differently, right? So when we do this kind of cultural analysis before entering a market, then we are better prepared to respond to reactions to the market we want to enter. So um, I develop a sort of a diagnosis process for companies or governments or people who want to enter different markets or different societies, excuse me, that at some point I might be able to share with you guys. For the moment, that will be a little bit too large. But perhaps the key point in here is to emphasize that there are certain cultural aspects that need to be taken under consideration when I help companies to enter a different market. I will go by this line of factors. If you would like, you can write it down. So first of all, is this market individualistic or collectivistic? Second is high or low context. That means require more or less information. Third is, are they quantity or quality oriented? You know that if they are based on quantity, they will also have the tendency to bargain more. You need to be able to deal with a bargaining factor so that the market or the buyer feels that they are actually getting more for less. And there's a trick of changing a little bit the percentages of the retail price. Um, the next one is this country as a market is a money or possessions oriented? Do they want to keep money, or they do want to keep things that they buy with the money they have? This is very important because what you will offer, for example, to a money oriented organization, money oriented in terms of they want to save that money for bigger things like, for example, real estate. You need to offer in your marketing campaign the value of that specific product in the long term based on economic profit, right? Whether or not this is possible is a different story. Marketing is a story that we tell the markets we want to enter. The next step in the cultural analysis will be whether this country is based on thirst or spending. So if it is thrift, they will say more, and if spending, they will spend more. Right now, again, this spending could be based on quantity, based on quality. Okay, so based on what is new, what is popular, is part of the analysis that we have to say, and also life pace. That this country has a fast life pace, like for example in Shanghai or Taipei, Japan, or is a very slow pace, like in Portugal, for example. And this is important because markets, countries, societies that move faster, they look for change in products and services faster. So now that I'm going to be talking about China, we will see that this is one of the key factors to enter China, to work with China. So the last part that I will, in the general scope of the cultural analysis, the last part of this general scope will be whether this society base their actions on the past, the present, or the future. And again, so all these factors will help you to determine your marketing campaign. What are you going to say? How much you're going to say, and how you are also going to set up your customer service system. Yeah. So after self service, basically. These are the general things, right? If we go specifics into China, um, so we need to understand. I don't know how many of you have been to China, or for how long. Um, you see one China within 1 year, and another within 3 years, and another within 7 years. You see many changes happening in this society, and very fast. But there are certain core factors in the society that we need to know so that we sort of prepare for that specific market. So China is a society that still works and in groups, like ruled by the law of main kind of society. So that tells you that networking orientation is the very first aspect that you need to develop in China. China in the whole world is like this. You need connections, but in China is very is part of their social DNA, the cultural DNA, right? The networking orientation. So, and there's a word in Chinese, guanxi, and most business people in China will tell you that in China, first is guanxi, second is guanxi, third is guanxi, and maybe later guanxi. So it's guanxi means networking. So it's all about networking. So that implies also a lot of lobbying in China, and that could be very costly if you don't understand how to lobby your Chinese partners in a way that is, you know, less, the impact is lower economically speaking. So I would just list to finish my sharing with you guys. Few aspects that you need to consider about China. Right? So first is a society that is a network oriented. You need to start building this network before you step into China. China is curious, but the curiosity lasts just for very few days. So that means that you need to be prepared with innovating or creating certain changes in the same product or services that will make your product or services look different, advanced, renovated, anew. So this the market will require this from you. So China is all about change. So the new and popular also are some things, factors that attract them, especially if this popularity comes from a country that they see as their similar others. Say, for example, um, one thing that I notice in China is that they look up at Europe in general for quality basis, and they look at the USA in general for lifestyle, right? And they are moving towards mixing these two tendencies, social tendencies, into China today. Um, is this something that is a sound that I need to stop right now? No. Okay. So I'm
Um,
going to finish anyways. Next part of the China society is that it is not a compromising society. Part of my services is maybe the most important part of my services is to check the documents that you are going to sign for your cooperation with China. I check the documents in Chinese, and English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Okay, so these are the languages that I can manage in this sense. And just to make sure that both in the contract, for example, both the context of both contracts, the one in Chinese and the one in English or Spanish or Portuguese, are exactly the same. By that saying that the words that I use mean exactly the same within the contractual clauses. So this is a very important thing that most Westerners under overlooked, because Westerners, I noticed, they are not very detail oriented in general. So not saying specifically about any country, but in general, that's what I noticed. And the Chinese contracts are very tricky because the tricky part of the contracts are in the middle, are in between lines, not on the fine print. So we need to know where to look for, because there are certain patterns as well, where to look for the tricky parts um, that will lower the risk of being a dispute that cannot be resolved. You will be affected less, but you will be always be affected anyways. Next thing is China support its own people, and you need to be aware of this. Chinese people will be put first. So any fight or any dispute you will have in China, even when you win, you sort of lose. You need to be very careful, not really solving the problems, but actually working a system that is a preventing system. So that's something that I will help you to do if you will be entering China or any market in the regions that I work for. The duality of thoughts is another thing that you consider
Miguel,
about China.
sorry, Miguel. I really need you to finish. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Just a
so
few.
anyway, so these were just aspects. The list is very long, and at some point we're going to have the opportunity to talk more about this, and I can extend to a more specific thing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for this presentation. Sorry for interrupting you, but we
No
have
worries.
a limited time. Right now, I'm going to ask for Simone to join us and explain a little bit more about the Brazilian ecosystem and what they are doing.
Well, I'm Simone Basile. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for the invitation. I am from Brazil, and I've been working business and strategy for years, mainly in the startup ecosystem in Brazil. I'm founder and head at Interactive, an entrepreneurship network. Our purpose is to contribute with entrepreneurs, investors, managers to the construction of we call transformative business, and in Brazil, Latin America, and Europe. We believe this is the one of the best ways to solve society's big challenges. And today, Pierre and I have a big challenge too, talking about Brazil. China is a complex country, and Brazil too. Well, I'm going to focus on 3 points that I consider very important. One of them, the entrepreneurship scenario in Brazil and opportunities in this ecosystem. Second, opportunities in green and climate entrepreneurship in Brazil, and what we are doing here to support Portuguese startups. So about entrepreneurship scenario, entrepreneurship has never been so prosperous in Brazil. There has never been so much investment in innovation, startups, and venture capital market in our country. Talking about numbers, we can say that there are about 500 unicorns in the world today. 50% of them are in the United States, about 25% in China, and in Brazil, until 2018, there was not a single Brazilian unicorn. Now we have 20. So the expectation of the Brazilian Startups Association is that in 5 years, our country will jump from 20 to 100 unicorns. The vast majority of these unicorns are in São Paulo, and the biggest city in Brazil. And we are going to talk a little more about São Paulo. And still talking about numbers, I have another things. Investments in Brazilian startups broke records in 2021. And according to Inside Venture Capital, a report by the innovation company called District, $5.2 billion were invested in Brazilian startups in the first semester of this year. In comparison with only the first half of last year, the increase is 299%. Okay, so there was also a significant change in the profile of startups that receive investments here in Brazil. While 64% of the deals were concentrated in early stage rounds, in the first half of this year, it changed, and later stage deals represented the bulk of the investment. Fintech is the most active segment in the Brazilian startup ecosystem, and the startups focus on financial service attract around half of the volume invested in the country. But where are the opportunities in Brazil? I think it's very interesting. There are many opportunities here, but fintechs, software companies, edtechs, and health techs are promising sectors. But I am sure that more and more Brazil will have great opportunities in green business and climate entrepreneurship. And why? First, because Brazil is a leading country in biodiversity. Another reason is because developing countries as Brazil will experience some of the worst climate impacts. In fact, we are already suffering some of these impacts. So in particular, entrepreneurs in developing economies have an important role to play in developing and adopting climate-friendly innovations. Let me give an example about that. These decarbonization solutions, these innovative business solutions that help decarbonize the economy are sometimes referred to clean techs, green techs, and more lately as climate techs. So I think here we have great opportunities. And of course, I couldn't fail to mention the opportunities related to the Amazon ecosystem. Brazil begins to discuss what we call Amazonia 4.0 project for the development of bioeconomy ecosystem in Amazonia. If this project gets off the ground, it will open up a great opportunities for green and climate startups here. And about Brazil and Portugal, what are we doing here to support Portuguese startups? This, as Portugal is a gateway to Europe for Brazilian entrepreneurs, Brazil ends up being a natural path to Latin America. We know that Portuguese government is putting into practice an ambitious plan to make the country the largest technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship hub in Europe. And it is already attracting entrepreneurs from all over the world. Brazil is taking large steps in the same direction, but with a little more bureaucracy for sure. But there are initiatives ranging from the national sphere to innovation laws and city programs that encourage the creation of local and regional entrepreneurship ecosystems. So you can say that a bridge between Brazil and Portugal has been built to facilitate the internationalization of startups for both countries. And I'd like to give some examples of these important initiatives. Florianópolis, a city in Santa Catarina state, is considered an innovation hub in the south of Brazil. The city hosted the meeting Startup Portugal, a Portugal public-private initiative to support public and private policies for the startup ecosystem from ideation to the scale of business. More than 50 companies and startups from Santa Catarina had the opportunity to approach the European ecosystem to receive investments and open branches in Portugal. On the other hand, the opportunity also presented itself for Portuguese startups to think about expansions to the attractive Brazilian consumer market. Another great evidence of this entrepreneurship bridge between Brazil and Portugal is the fact that both countries have joined in a partnership for the development of startups focused on Industry 4.0 in both locations. The two countries joined and developed the Startup Industry 4.0 program led by the Brazilian Agency for Industrial Development. And one more evidence of this bridge, one of the accelerators for these opportunities is the Brazilian version of Fábrica de Startups, a Portuguese startup incubator. In this project, the teams from Portugal and Brazil work together to align strategy and help entrepreneurs from Portugal and Europe to enter into the Brazilian market and later in Latin America. Here in São Paulo, where I live, it's considered the largest city in the country and also the richest state in Brazil that has, for example, an innovation program carried out by the City Hall to quickly solve urban challenges. São José dos Campos, in São Paulo state, was considered the most innovative city in Brazil, where there is a technology park with more than 300 companies and educational institutes. Recife, a city in the northwest of Brazil, created Porto Digital, with hundreds of companies and more than 6,000 professionals, with the objective of developing startups and initiatives focused on science, city, and environment sustainability. So some of these points that I brought here show us that Brazil has been moving well in the entrepreneurship journey, including more support for Portuguese startups. But, of course, Brazil still needs more public policies and incentives focused on entrepreneurship. We have much more work to do. So this is now Pierre is going to talk a little about some challenges in Brazil, and it's very interesting because it's a point of view from an European citizen living and working here. Thanks.
Thank you, Simone. Good afternoon, guys. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Pierre Verhoeven. As you can see, I'm not Brazilian. I'm from Brussels, Belgium, and I've been here in Brazil for a bit more than 2 years. My main goal here in Brazil is to facilitate business between Brazil and other countries. So helping companies in other countries to settle in Brazil and helping Brazilian startups to develop their operation outside of Brazil. So I'm going to be very honest with you. Brazil is full of opportunities, but Brazil is a very complex country to do business in. So I'm going to start explaining you what are the main challenges of doing business in Brazil. So as you all know, Brazil has been severely affected by the COVID-19 crisis in terms of human losses and economically. Numbers are still high, but it seems that Brazil has emerged from the most critical phase. Inflation and unemployment are still high and need to be dealt with quickly. Another big concern, and that is no news for anyone, I guess, for Brazilians and for investors, are the 2022 elections and the constant political instability. I prefer not to discuss this topic further, as it is complicated to predict what will happen in the future. Another great challenge and problem, I would say, in Brazil is what we call the Custo Brasil. This expression refers to a set of structural, bureaucratic, labor, and economic difficulties that is hindering, in fact, the country's growth, that negatively influence the business environment, and that compromise investments. So this is a huge problem in Brazil, and I'm going to give you now a couple of illustrations. So the first one, as started, you might want to open a branch here in Brazil in the future. To open a branch, it's very complex and very slow, and that it illustrates well the Brazilian bureaucracy. Another very famous problem is in Brazil is the Brazilian tax system. So the tax system here is divided in three categories. So you have the federal, state, and municipal taxes. But you have to know that Brazil is a huge country. So we have 26 states, and we have approximately 5,600 municipalities. And each state and municipality might have a different way to collect tax and different tax rates. You can imagine how complicated it is to deal with taxes in Brazil. And another thing you have to know is that taxes in Brazil are unfair. So you have like sector that will be taxed more heavily than others. Luckily, the government is currently working on a tax reform that we hope that will be live soon. And last point I would say would be the complex labor law that we have in Brazil, and that can result in labor lawsuits if you don't fully understand them. So now I've talked about the bad news. I mean, the challenges you have to know before developing your operation here. Now I'm going to talk about why Brazil is an attractive country. Simone already talked about the entrepreneurship ecosystem, the opportunities, and I'm going to talk about Brazil as a whole. So Brazil is in the 10th largest economy in the world and the largest economy in Latin America. So we're talking about a huge country and also a huge market, because Brazil is the 7th largest consumer market in the world, with over 210 million inhabitants. Okay. Another important thing about Brazil is that Brazil has a strategic geographical position that allows an easy access to more than 900 million consumers just in the Americas. As most of you already know, Brazil is also an exporting power in agricultural and commodities and mineral commodities like soybeans, iron ores, and meat, for example. If you compare Brazil to their neighbors, we can say that Brazil has a more developed logistics infrastructure than our neighbors. However, there are still many challenges, many things that can be improved in this sector. I talked a bit about how Brazil has been affected by the COVID-19 crisis, but this economic environment is also favorable for those who hold strong currencies. As you may know, the value of the real, the real, which is the currency in Brazil, is very weak. So you can find cheap assets in Brazil. You have plenty of opportunities for mergers and acquisition. So you have to think about that also. And I think I would say that Brazil has also favorable policies for foreign investors. So when we talk about tax, we said that the tax system is very complex, that the tax system is not fair. This is true. However, if you compare the taxation on profit in Europe, in the US, to the taxation on profit here in Brazil, the taxation is lower. Okay, you don't have any taxation on dividends here in Brazil. You have tax incentives, for example, tech startups. You have credit sources, and you have a very low taxation for individuals. So those points are what I would say. Brazil is a country you should consider, definitely consider. So it has its problems, it has its challenges, but it's a country full of opportunities. And if you want to settle your business in Brazil, you have to know exactly how to do so. And I'm going to give you a couple of tips today to help you with your challenge to come to Brazil if you're planning to do so. So in Brazil, that's kind of an administrative detail, but the CEO of a company in Brazil must have permanent residency in Brazil. And all the foreign shareholders of the company must be represented legally by someone with permanent residency. So if, for example, you are in a pre-operational phase in Brazil, you don't have anyone you can trust here, you can find partners that will help you with this representation. What would be the biggest advice I have for you? Like Brazilians said, Brazil is not a country for beginners. So the thing I would advise you to do is to find the right partners, and we can help you with that. So you need those right partners to start first your business here, and then to develop it. The right partner for me is someone that obviously understands your business, but more importantly, someone that you can trust. As I said, the first partners you will need to start your operation are a good lawyer and a good accountant. As I've already told you that those two sectors are complicated here. So they will assist you in the administrative, but also strategic procedures that you need that need to be well defined from the very beginning, so that your business can thrive and so that you can more easily attract investment if that's your objective. Something that's also very interesting to tell you when you're preparing your budget and your planning to settle in Brazil, or if you're already operating in Brazil, you need to take into account the Custo Brasil. For example, if you plan to spend 50,000 euros to settle in Brazil and start your operation, and if you plan to do it in 3 months, you should plan more than 50,000 euros and more than, I think I said 2 months. This is what I've been experiencing here. Another thing, let's say, okay, I want to come to Brazil. I think Brazil is the right country for me to start my operation in Latin America. You need to be careful who you send to Brazil to lead this project, because the person you will send there need to be able to cope with stress, with change, with uncertainty, and it needs to be someone that is who is patient. That is very important. I'm still in Brazil. I've been here for more than 2 years. Brazil is an amazing country, has an amazing culture, has amazing landscapes, and I'm very happy to be here. And last thing I would say is that Brazil has a size of a continent. Okay, so doing business in São Paulo is different than doing business in other regions. So culture of each region is important to know when you want to do business here.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Sorry, we just need to interrupt you.
I understand.
Thank you very much, Pierre and Simone. And now I'll ask for Rom, if you please want to join us and talk a little bit more about what you're doing and what are the company you're representing.
Hi, I'll try to be brief because I'm based in Israel, with a 9 million people country and not China or Brazil. But just briefly about myself, my name is Rom Hendler. I'm the CEO of Innovel. Innovel is a corporate open innovation platform. So basically, we help international cooperation access emerging technologies, specifically within the Israeli ecosystem. Just quickly about my background, I spent more than 15 years. Actually, I was based in Las Vegas, and I was working for Las Vegas Sands. It's an integrated resort, casino, hotel, biggest company in its industry. Very familiar with China. I was the chief marketing officer, chief information officer, opened all the casinos in Macau, in Singapore. Very familiar also with Brazil. My wife is Brazilian. Eu falo pouco português também. But Israel, unlike the other two speakers, is not the country where you actually want to go to if you're looking to grow your company exponentially from a market share. It's a small country. It's 9 million people with a very unique culture, unique language, which requires a lot of effort for not much return. So normally, if you come to Israel, it's in a much later stage. The uniqueness of Israel is that it's a country that has the most startup per capita in the world. I think Simone was mentioning that there are 500 unicorn. I think in 2019 there were 400. Today there are already over 600. Israel has the most unicorn per capita. Just in March this year, we had 7 new unicorn just that 1 month. Many of them are coming from cybersecurity, fintech, and other areas as well. So it's a very, very rich ecosystem that has a lot of innovation, and most of those startups are working outside again because the internal market is not that important. The uniqueness of Israel is, I think it was mentioned both in China and Brazil, network is very important. However, in Israel, network is extremely effective because it's a very small country, and you do want to work with a local partner even when you look for investment, when you look for innovation, emerging technology. What we've seen in the last, there are a couple of trends that I want to talk about. One is in general corporates that are more advanced and that are looking for emerging technology. We see them changing and shifting from the purchasing habit. Instead of just buying technology, going to a trade show, or just waiting for people to come and sell to you, many of them are physically and actively looking for emerging technology. So in Israel, we have more than 400 presence for multinational that have either open innovation, R&D center, and they're just looking for this innovation. Again, they're not there to sell the technology, they're there to acquire or use or collaborate with local startups. So I think that the most important for the Israeli startup to get to them is the ease of access, because it's so competitive. They can work with, if they want, Coca-Cola is there, or BMW, or Citibank. So they have all those different vertical. So if you want to be serious about that market and really tap into this emerging technology, you do need to have some local presence, because the ease of talking to the startup, screening them, the ease for them to approach you is very, very important. And I think by this, I would leave it here, so there is some more time for question down the road.
Thank you very much, Rom, for the presentation. And next, we can hear a little bit more on Sofia. Sofia, can you join us?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the
Sofia, please take the
invitation.
stage.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So I'm Sofia Cassimo from Mozambique. I'm representing Idea Lab, which is one of the pioneers organizations here in Mozambique, working with entrepreneurship and the promotion of innovation. We've been in business for more than 10 years. We have worked with more than 3,800 entrepreneurs, and in our network, in our community, we have more than 30,000 people. We focus on the inspiration, activation, and acceleration of businesses. So we are catalyzers of the ecosystem. It's like what we want to call this. We have a team where we are all entrepreneurs. So we always like to put that also in whatever project we are developing. We are based in Mozambique, but actually we have worked with a lot of countries here in the region, in Southern Africa, from Zimbabwe, Uganda, South Africa, and Angola. So we have a very good understanding of what is the ecosystem in terms of doing business in Mozambique. Me, myself, with one of the other things that I do, which is working directly with the private sector, with what we call, which is the betterment of the ecosystem for doing business. And we also tackle the main constraints and regulations that we need to put in place to actually have the ecosystem being more feasible for doing businesses. In terms of business in our country, we are very young. We only became independent 45 years ago, so we have all the challenges of a young country. Our market is still a little bit volatile, but we have amazing opportunities as well. One of the main things that I like to focus about our country is our people. We are very prone and very open to receiving, and we are always looking for more opportunities. We have a very particular position in the continent. So we are in Southern Africa, but we have more than 2,000 kilometers of coast. And that serves about 5 countries who are landlocked. So we are the gateway for Asia. We are the gateway for Middle East. And by that come a lot of opportunities as well. We are very focused on agriculture, on mineral and extractive industry, transports and technology, etc. We have a very booming ecosystem in terms of entrepreneurs. I mean, we have a lot of companies really interesting coming up, and that for us has been very good and very exciting to see. I mean, 10 years ago when we started, entrepreneurship was not even a word that many people understood what it was. And nowadays it's like something that we even have the government talking about it. We have policies, we have strategies in place. So this is actually a very good moment to come to Mozambique. I think we are full of chances in terms of development. We are a very young country. So in terms of workforce, we are full of it. Also, our country, 2/3 of it is irrigated. So that makes us with 90% of the country very prone for agriculture. But we also have a little bit of the downsizes, right? We really don't have access to a lot of capital in terms of investment, especially for startups. It's very difficult to have access to capital so that you can actually invest and grow your business. That's a part of the ecosystem that still needs to develop. And also in terms of the bureaucracy of the legal system, we also need to put some changes in place. But I think we are on the right way. Like I said, we are a young country and we are learning and we are open to business. And we have a lot of initiatives taking place for that. Our institutions are well organized in that sense. Even in terms of private sector, we have the CTA, which I'm part of, which is the National Confederation of Private Sector. And we have branches in all the 11 provinces in Mozambique. We also have associations for instance, for small and medium enterprises. I'm also the interim president for the National Federation for Women in Business. We have Youth Business also association. So in terms of private sector, we are very organized and we have something that is very particular in our country and not many countries in the world have, which is what we call the DPP, which is the public-private dialogue, which is by the decree of the government. It's an open channel where private sector and government sit and discuss what are the regulations, the transformations in terms of not only the legal system, but in terms of the infrastructure that the government has for doing business that needs to be changed so that business becomes more viable. This has been a very interesting thing to be part of. where we see that this dialogue actually helps relieve a little bit of these constraints and actually have the government have a more active role in this transformation. And that being said, I know many of you maybe have heard that we are opening our natural gas, the developed projects. We have Area 1, Area 4, and several others. So in terms of natural resources and extractive industry, it's one of the parts that it's really booming as well right now. Agriculture, it's other. And tourism, I would like to finalize with that one. In terms of the best beaches in the world, we have 2 of them in our coast. But that's just a little bit of what we have. We have really good beaches, and tourism is a really big part of our market as well. And that's it. I think if you want to know a little bit more of Mozambique, I'm here to answer your questions, and come here.
Thank you very much, Sofia, for the presentation, and I hope someday I'll go to some beach in Mozambique also, because I'm one guy who spent most of his time on the beach. So one day probably I want to try also the Mozambique beaches. So the last one, but not the minus importance. So we'll ask to Mikhail to join us. Hi, Mikhail.
Sorry, guys, I'm facing a little bit technical trouble, but I think that you hear me. I asked the team to. So, yeah, could you just confirm that you hear me, because I lost the sound and
yes, Mikhail. Yes, I can hear you.
It's working properly.
It's okay for us.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's okay.
So thank you again. So I'm Mikhail. I'm from Russia originally. I'm in France now because I'm based in France working for our clients. So what we basically do, I'm a co-founder of the consulting company that helps Russian startups to enter the European and US markets. And we also have a growing interest for Brazilian market because there are some similarity in business models as we face. On the other side, for the last 7 years before I started my company that I'm doing for 5 years already, I used to work for the Moscow government special agency, focusing on attracting international startups to come to Moscow and supporting Russian startups going abroad globally, to Asia, to Europe, and to States. I have a good... So I will try to give us some overview, taking into account the limited amount of time. I will try to give an overview of what specific tools you can use and what specific strategies you can use based on my experience of working both with bringing in Russian startups outside of Russia and bringing international startups into Russia. So I think that in this way, you might be more interested to listen about Russia because you're European startups, most of the participants today, I believe. So you might be quite aware about how to deal in Europe. However, I believe it's still a challenge for a Portuguese startup to enter the French market because I see huge mental differences in that. But anyway, if we focus on Russia today, I would say that there are several things that are same for any market, and there are quite a few that are specific to Russian market. So the general, my message would be a kind of add-on, not to double, not to go again about the same topics, points that mentioned before by other speakers. Most of them were mentioned. I would like just to focus about on the importance of strategic partnership, of local partnership. This is specifically important for Russia, but I face this in France. I face this in UK, less, but more in France. Yeah, I face this in China, and that was mentioned many times. I believe this is important for Brazil, that my personal experience and experience of many of our clients is that strategic partnership is a key to avoiding mental barriers, to avoiding legal barriers and risks, to reducing the time lapse required to gain the local knowledge. And there are quite a few specific instruments that they can use for that. I would recommend two of them. So that's both for Russia and internationally. And one of them is different types of open challenges programs that are done by city administrations and big corps as an open innovation approach. 7 years ago, I was launching this instrument in Moscow, in Russia, to open the public procurement that at that moment was around $50 billion a year, to open this procurement for any types of startups, including international startups, in a wide area of topics, including smart city, clean tech, fintech, health tech, and many other transportation. And this was a spin-off of the San Francisco program, and then we also used the experience of Amsterdam, open challenges, and startup in residence, it's called, and Barcelona open challenges. So most of the cities in Europe, in the States, and in Russia now are using this to attract all types of technology solutions from abroad, as well from internal, so it's international, that can help tackle certain challenges of the city, urban challenges, security challenges, transportation challenges. And the same approach is used by corporations. So, for example, that might be of interest for some specific startups. There's a set of accelerators, and that's the second point I would like to focus on, that are specifically organized around certain verticals in Moscow now. For example, I'm helping the food tech accelerator with several corporations in Russia to specifically scout for international startups that have interesting, appealing food tech solutions of different aspects, to come to Russia and pilot their technology, their solution, their product to the Russian market. So this is open innovation challenges plus acceleration programs are very helpful in terms of finding the right strategic partner, because all open innovation challenges are usually organized with help of a specific. Sorry, there's some sound there's on the street. Some specific partners, co-organizers who are doing that.
It's okay.
Sorry, I just changed the location.
The noise is just awful.
Really
No problem.
I hope so.
Don't worry.
So coming back to the point, so the open innovation challenges will always, and accelerators will help you find the strategic partner who will be the person the organization who will help you to tackle all the barriers. Because speaking about Russia, it's extremely difficult to enter the Russian market without a local partner. And secondly, legally, in many cases, it's not possible to do that, because you need to be localized as a Russian company. And it's much easier to do that having a strategic partner who can save your time, money, and effort and reduce risks on doing that. So I think this correlates to any market, but I would like to share, if you like, I can share some links with the Open Innovation Challenges program in Moscow and the accelerators. And I'm really open to any questions about the Russian market that I might be helpful to as a person who can help you navigate on this market and understand if it's a good option for your project or product, and helping you to navigate around certain open running programs in Russia, in Moscow specifically. Well, it's to keep it short. I think that's all. Just what I would like to contribute to the discussion, and I will be available to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, for the presentation, and I think that this is it. All of you guys already explained a little bit more about what you're doing, who you are, and what your countries can do also for the entrepreneurs who want to be in their countries. So thank you very much for all this information. I think we have a lot of insights here to take in. Now we are going to look for some questions in the audience, because during the session, people in Facebook and YouTube from Acredita Portugal, they were asking here some question, and I'm share the question here on the screen. Then who wants to, if it's directed to you, please answer. If it's to anyone, it's a general question. Anyone who can intervene can just talk. Okay, so I think this one is more focused for probably Miguel. What sort of business would you bring to the Chinese market?
So it's truly a very difficult question, because basically China is consuming anything that comes from abroad, but that anything should be analyzed in terms of how well do China know that product or that services. So I think the question um, should be in a specific way to say, for example, what will be the challenges or the opportunities? How can I bring, say, papayas into China? Okay, and that is a better. I mean, I might have an answer for that, but for this question, it's pretty risky to say. One thing that you have to understand about China is that by becoming the factory of the world, they know very well what it takes to make absolutely any product of any quality. So if you're coming with products, you need to study pretty well your value proposition, based on the fact that they know very well that sometimes, for example, Adidas will have manufacturing facilities in China and then import or sell the product in China as an imported product. You know what I'm saying? So and in China, if they manufacture in there, they know what it costs. So the market could be a little bit tricky in terms of accepting price models. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't risk in giving you a specific answer to this. I would rather go in saying that anything that is popular in the developed world could be interested for the Chinese market. That being said, you need to be able to change a little bit of what the product is in the West or in the developed world and how it is going to be in China. And those changes should be very, very constant and quick, for the Chinese market to feel that okay, so there is a new thing. China is a country, a society, and in constant change, and that comes to services and products.
Thank you, Miguel. Now we have a question from Katia. Probably for Pierre and Simone, are there specific programs for Portuguese startups to go to Brazil?
Sorry. Yes, there are some specific ones, and probably I could say that in Santa Catarina, as I said, we have we had a meeting, yes, the startup Portugal, and it is something that Santa Catarina and Florianopolis mainly is going to repeat, probably some each year. And we have for industry 4.0, yes, we have a partnership of development of these startups focus on Industry 4.0. And it's a program led by the Brazilian Agency for Industrial Development. Yes. So we have also Fábrica de Startups that I said. Fábrica de Startups is a Portuguese startup incubator, and well, and they are here. It's a version, a Brazilian version here. So very well prepared to take care of Portuguese startups. Yes, so I think it's a very good beginning. Yes, to try.
Thank you, Simone. The next question. Isn't Israel already too competitive for a newcomer? Rom, take it away.
I'm not sure what they mean as a newcomer. Do they mean for a startup to come to Israel? If they mean startup to come to Israel, then I would say the reason why you come to Israel is not because you want to penetrate the market, is because you want to leverage on the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is so rich. There are many investors. There is a lot of know-how that can help you accelerate your startup very rapidly. There are programs, for example, the Australian government has a program in Israel that they send startup for 3 months to Israel. again, kind of to immerse in the ecosystem. But again, if you just want to be a startup in Israel, it's very competitive, and it's not worth the effort, because the market that you're going to gain is very small. And even most Israeli startup, especially the unicorn, at the end of the day, they sell externally. Sometimes they don't even sell in Israel. Some of them.
Thank you, Rom. I think this is two questions. The first one is to everybody. Okay, in this challenging and global world, which is your best advice to new entrepreneurs? And the second one is, what is the best markets to be in it? So every one of you will defend your own market. So the first question, I don't know, who wants to start giving some advice for new entrepreneurs who wants to start a business?
Maybe I should start, because then I'm not going to address the market. So I think that in general, actually, there is on one end, there is a lot of money in floating in the world right now. So it's relatively easy to raise money, but it's more difficult to raise money if you are a first-time entrepreneur and if you have no revenue. So if you are really in a pre-seed stage, that you just have an idea and you have never done it before, it is very difficult to raise money, even in Israel. If you already have some product or selling, it's very easy, and actually most of the time people are oversubscribed. The second thing that I would say is, I think it was mentioned before, network is extremely important. There is no bad connection, maybe there are bad partners. So I would say the local partner that you get in Israel, China, or Brazil, the most important thing to look is that they're going to be honest, because you really need to count on that person that are working far away from you. But network is extremely important. And when you do, one of the things that startup has to learn very quickly is to say no. So sometimes it seems like a great opportunity to work with a big corporation, but if you're in early stages and you're not ready, that type of opportunity can kill you, because the organization is just too big, too slow, doesn't know how to work. And that's why I think Mikhail mentioned it, and we do it as well in Israel and other places. And those open innovation platform and program that help you accelerate and help you deal with those big corporations are extremely important.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else wants to add something?
If I may say something, I think the first question is which market is the best market to enter right now?
No. The first question is advice for someone who wants to start a business, and the second question was, what is the best market for you to enter?
Okay, so the first one is it's a very generic, easy to say. You have to see the global markets, and based on your products and services, whether or not the opportunity exists, right? So it's pretty basic. The second one, I will talk about Portugal. And the reason why I say Portugal is one of the best markets to enter is because there are many things in here that are not developed yet. I mean, there are certain products or certain services that don't exist in here. So one of the, say, opportunities or markets that present a lot of opportunities are those markets that don't have what you have, or they are not necessarily, those services or products are not very well developed. Also, the government in here has actually pretty good supporting programs. And I was just asking LinkedIn, in a LinkedIn group, now that I'm in Portugal, saying, okay, so what is it really to be in Portugal, right? What are the opportunities in there? And my simple answer was that first, you have a peace of mind in here because it's a pretty safe country, and that matters for businesses. The bureaucracy is still a big problem for businesses in here, but again, so there is huge opportunity for almost all kinds of businesses, especially in technology. But going back to my culture, sort of preparing the core, is something that you need to also take under consideration when entering. But Portugal is actually a pretty good market, and that is, if you are interested in the European market, this could be a base that could benefit. That's why I am considering actually completely closing China facility and then moving to Portugal. But don't take my decision as a guiding route. But I can see that. So in terms of opportunities, there's a lot that you can do here, as long as you have the patience to deal with the bureaucracy that still exists. They might be changing this at some point, but yeah. So that will be just general answers to those two questions.
Thank you, Miguel. We have just more time for one or two questions. This one also is interesting. If you need to choose one thing to not do when starting a business in your country, what will it be? I don't know, Mikhail, you want to say something?
Wow.
Well, there are many things. The first thing that I have, it's the general question, but I think the first thing is that you should always try and error, right, to have some experience. So it's difficult to say not to take a risk to do something. So that's the first challenge that's coming to me. But if thinking about, in my opinion, if thinking about what not to do is, in my experience, it was always a wise decision for most of our clients and for most of the companies I faced to develop some ground in your own country first before going international. So if you have resources, local resources in your own country, so don't try to go global from the first day. So build something in your own country, even if the market is not big, but you have good access to resources there, right? You have local knowledge of the market, you have local support. So try to build the product, the scenario, the business model there, and then of course you will change it significantly while going to another country. But still, you need to have some ground to start from. So don't rush to go international to global markets before you feel confident with and have some success with your own product in your own country. So that's not rushing to go globally before you have a solid background in your home country.
Thank you, Mikhail. Sofia, do you have any advice? Oh, I see
Yes.
a hand up.
Yes, because actually it's very funny, because I was actually this week in a conference about the AFCFTA, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Zone, and we're actually discussing that. And we all agreed in one thing regarding people coming to do business in Africa, which is most of the people don't do their homework. So my advice would be, do your homework. And what do I mean by that? It's not only to read the financial reports, etc., but understand the history, understand the culture, try to understand the people, and at least get some local information from local companies, whether they are foreign or they are national, so that you actually have a very good overview what can you expect from that market, right? And many times when companies come here and they don't have like the best experiences, many times they don't do their homework, and also they come with a top-down attitude, and they are not very prone for sharing, or not with a very open mind or a very open heart. And I think that means for everywhere where we go in the world, if you want to do business, right? Get to know where you're going and actually understand if what you are bringing as an offer actually makes sense to that market.
Thank you, Sofia. Pierre, I saw you put your hand up.
Yeah, so it's linked with what Sofia said, do not overestimate culture. You have the way to do business that might be different from your country, and then your solution, service, products must be adapted to the culture of the market you're entering.
Felipe, just one thing.
Yes,
So
please.
if it is in terms of China, one thing that I would advise not to do is to come with something new. And the reason is that China is very inquisitive, and they actually consumed what is being consumed and tested somewhere else, because they are risk averse kind of culture. And it's interesting, like it's a paradox, because they are very entrepreneurial. But in the sense of accepting or taking a product, they will do the research, they will do the homework. So when you come new, they will rather put you on the side and see whether or not you're going to succeed or fail before they give you serious thoughts. So this is something very specific about China, what not to do entering that market that I will recommend.
What not to do in China is not to piss off the central government.
Well,
Very important.
yeah, I tell you what, it's very interesting because in China you really feel the freedom to do. I mean,
Till you don't.
it's an amazing thing. So me being there 28 years, I done a lot, and I will feel more limited in Europe than I did in China. But anyway, so a topic for a different time. One of the things in terms of products or services, don't come new.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, guys, for all your participation. Unfortunately, we need to close this session. We are in our last minute, so I'll ask you guys if you want to, in 10 seconds, give an advice, give some incentive words for the Portuguese entrepreneurs who are watching us. You can just start it.
I would just say one quick thing is, first of all, as entrepreneur, you need to be humble, and you need to know that you don't know what you don't know. Meaning that you need to understand that there is a lot of things that you don't even know that you don't know. So if you know that you don't know it, you're already in good shape.
Agree.
Thank you, Rom. Anyone else? And some final words? 10 seconds?
I'll just say one thing, and especially if you are a startup, always prepare for the worst and expect the best. I think many times, especially with the millennials, right? We are all very big when we are thinking, and as a startup, the mind of the entrepreneur is very much in the vision, right? It's not much more in the present. So explore a little bit more of the present. And I think one of the great things that we have now globally regarding entrepreneurship, there are a lot of networks, there are a lot of actually entities, organizations supporting entrepreneurship. So get to know who is around you in your community, who is doing what in terms of supporting entrepreneurship, connect with people. And if you want to go global, maybe that's a pathway, because then you will have some shared of the risk. And maybe they will be in a better position to advise you because they have more experience.
I'd like to say only one thing about, I think that it's important to know if the pen the entrepreneur identified is a real pen in the country where he intends to internationalize. Yes, because sometimes we have different pens in different countries. Yes, so I think it's very, very important to understand that. And about Brazil, I think it's the entrepreneur needs to have an extra patience, resilience, perseverance, and a little hope for better days. So I think Brazil is a big challenge, and it's very interesting to focus on that.
Yeah, some final words.
One thing that I will suggest, I'm sorry, did I step into anybody?
No, because Mikhail, I was letting Mikhail for the last one. No, because Mikhail was spending all the time thinking, what I'm going to say. So I'm going to give him
go ahead.
He's going to have the final word in this session. Okay.
All right.
So Pierre, please.
You said Pierre, huh?
Yeah, Pierre, final words, yes.
No, I was just about to say that the people that are startups that are assisting us, feel free to get in touch with us. Even though you're not interested to come to Brazil, I'm interested to know about your business model. I'm interested to know about your country, so it would be a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
Nice.
Now it's the time, Mikhail. Now it's the time. Final words.
I was thinking what a kind of conclusion. So I really like the virtual type, but I'm really very much looking forward back to offline meetings to see you guys so physically, not virtually. I'm really very much looking forward to the Web Summit in November, that is in Lisbon. And I just want to say that if you are thinking about going global, start going to as many international conferences like this one, like Web Summit, like / anyone, right? Anyone of the conferences, as much as possible. There are plenty of opportunities to get subsidized to participate by different expert agencies and so on. For startups, there's amazing opportunities for startups to go for free, for example. So go and use this opportunity. I hope that despite the COVID, and we will be meeting soon again in person. And I think that many of us will meet in Web Summit. I'm going there, by the way. So if you want to meet and talk there, let's use this opportunity.
Thank you, Mikhail. Thank you, all of you guys, for being here with us today. So important for us, Acredita Portugal. Sharing all your knowledge and expertise was just amazing. I'm going to pass now to Portuguese, okay? So please don't for doing the closure, okay? A todos aí em casa, muito obrigado por terem estado connosco ao longo desta semana. Foram 9 sessões super intensas, com muita informação, muito conhecimento, muitos oradores aqui que partilharam um conjunto de coisas incríveis e maravilhosas. Quero agradecer mais uma vez a vossa presença e o vosso esforço também aqui nos comentários. Foi um ano incrível, temos muitas perguntas, não conseguimos responder a todas as perguntas, infelizmente, mas tal como foi aqui dito, podem contactar qualquer uma das pessoas que aqui estiveram, procurem no LinkedIn, procurem nos eventos, de certeza que os vão encontrar e vão conseguir também pedir-lhes ajuda, que neste ecossistema que nós criamos aqui, o ecossistema empreendedor, normalmente qualquer pessoa ajuda outra pessoa, portanto, não percam o medo, não fiquem agarrados também um bocadinho ao vosso medo e vão à procura das vossas soluções. Obrigado a todos. Relembro que amanhã nós vamos ter a gala de entrega de prémios, e a gala onde vão ser anunciados os vencedores da 11ª edição do concurso Banco, Montepio, Acredita Portugal. Vai ser transmitida em direto e pela primeira vez depois da pandemia vamos fazer um evento híbrido. Será o primeiro evento da Acredita Portugal físico. Infelizmente será a porta fechada, vamos ter apenas uns finalistas e alguns convidados, mas podem assistir nas nossas redes sociais, podem assistir através da Virtual Week. Estão mais do que convidados, espero que se juntem a nós e muito obrigado.
Obrigada.